The schools may be gone, but the legends live forever. Welcome to the Final Jumpshot podcast. Here's your host, Marcus Carlton.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed listening so far to episodes 1 and 2 of the Final Jumpshot. On this episode, we're going to talk about a very familiar name to Northeast Arkansas, but not in the way that you probably know this man's name. Nelson Catalina. He's the topic of today's episode, but we're not going to talk about when he was coaching Arkansas State. Did you know that before he led the Indians into battle at the Fieldhouse, and then later on at the Convo Center, Coach Cat spent time coaching high school hoops in Northeast Arkansas. He coached at Leachville High School in the 70s, but prior to that, he played for the Turrell Rockets. And this is where our story begins today on the Final Jumpshot. Well, joining me now on the Final Jumpshot is a name well known around Northeast Arkansas, Coach Nelson Catalina, former Arkansas State head coach and alumni of the Turrell Rockets. Coach, appreciate you coming on with me.
Well, glad to be a help. I hope I can help you some. My background is Turrell, and I know Northeast Arkansas pretty well. Not only did I play at Turrell and graduate from there, I coached at Leachville for a couple of years before I went back to Washington. So I know Northeast Arkansas pretty well.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned Leachville, because the first episode that we had on the podcast here was about a guy from Leachville by the name of Jerry Lee Atkinson, played in the 50s at Leachville. And so we got to kind of got whetted the appetite a little bit on Leachville Lions, and we'll be going back to revisit that down the road. So I may reconnect with you and talk a little bit of Leachville at another time. But right now we'll talk a little bit about Turrell and the basketball prowess. I mean, I actually played against Turrell in high school a little bit, ran into him a couple times at the NEA, and it didn't fare too well for my team. But to know that, the Rockets were always one of those teams that you had to look out for in the Class B setting.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. We were the smallest classification in the state of Arkansas. We didn't have a very large school system to speak of. Matter of fact, we didn't have football. I'm sure most people know this or don't know it, but I like to explain it. When you grow up in a community that rallies around, everything is around the school and everything's around the basketball program. We had a little track for a while, and then that faded, but mostly basketball. And that was the sport. That was everything that everybody hung their hat on, if you will. And I really enjoyed growing up in that community. I do miss the opportunity to, after talking to others years later about, I played football at such and such, or I did this. We didn't have all those sports. We had basketball. That's what we did almost 360. I did play some baseball in the summer, but most of the time it was just basketball.
And that's one of the things that I feel like is really unique that a lot of people don't realize about the small schools is that, if you're one of the fortunate small schools, you have basketball and maybe baseball, and that's it. And then, like you said, it's pretty much 360 that you spend a lot of your time on basketball. It's just different. I mean, how would you explain it to someone that maybe didn't grow up in a small school like that?
You hear people talk about Indiana and Illinois, especially Indiana, about basketball, Kentucky being a religion. I think in that community, basketball was the religion. It was the thing that pulled everybody together, regardless of what your affiliation was politically, regardless of what your affiliation was church-wise. It pulled everybody together, and if you wanted to go see the community of Turrell on a Tuesday or Friday night, all you had to do was go to the high school gym, and the majority of them were right there. I was very fortunate, very blessed to have not only outstanding coaches, but some outstanding teammates that I was fortunate enough to play for and play with, and we grew up in an environment that was somewhat every afternoon we played basketball. I mean, even in the summers, most of the time when you're playing baseball, and we did played baseball in the summer, we played a lot of basketball. Everybody around there was sort of like Hoosiers. We had our own little goals. When I'm not talking about concrete, we had my dad put up a telephone pole with a backboard and a basketball goal so that I could shoot and practice out beside our house, and you wore it out. I mean, if it rained, you couldn't play because there was 2 or 3 inches within the 10, 12 feet of the basket because you'd worn it out over the years.
I can relate to that completely. I mean, that sounds kind of like the way I grew up in my day back of being a teenager too, because it was, it was pretty much farming and basketball was pretty much all we had.
Yeah,
So,
well, in my case, we catered to the farmers. My dad owned a grocery store there, and for my entire life, and afterwards, before and afterwards, and he catered to the farmers. They would obviously come in at noon and pick up lunches and stuff for everybody and their workers and so forth. So, yeah, I got to know the community really well. You either own a little business there in Turrell or you farm. I mean, and that was back in the day when, you could farm 100, 200 acres and make a decent living. That is since long gone, and that will never return. But the modernization of machinery and the size. I mean, I know people that now farm 15, 16, 17,000 acres versus 200 or 300 acres.
Yeah. So you mentioned your teammates and coaches that you played for. Throw some of those names out there for the people listening.
Some of the people that unfortunately that I played with and coached for are deceased. Jim Kimbrell was an old coach that I had and respected. He was at Dice for years and moved over in 1964, I think it was, and became our coach at the high school level. He brought along with him his brother, a guy named Jackie Kimbrell, and I know Jackie pretty well. He married my first cousin. They met there at Turrell, and he was a senior. He only played 1 year at Turrell. He was a senior, and they went to the finals that year and got beat by Greenbrier in the state finals in 1965. Went on to play for the University of Arkansas. Was a highly recruited young man out of our community. But they had a really, really good basketball team, and some of those guys I have not kept up with that bunch. And unfortunately, the guys I played with grew up pretty much within the community of Turrell, and we played almost daily. And believe it or not, there's only 2 of the 5 starters that are living. The other 3 of the 5 have deceased and gone on. But we were together from the first grade almost through the 12th. Matter of fact, we played together from the 3rd through the 12th. And people like Eddie Horton, I think he made all NEA. Brother Moore, who got killed, unfortunately, at a very young age, was in college. Lonnie White, who passed away just 2 or 3 years ago, was an outstanding player. His dad was a farmer. Joe Driver and I, the only 2 starters left. Joe lives and farms there in the community with his son. He's helping his son out. He's my age now, so he's beyond doing full-time stuff, but he does help his son in the farming world. But these guys were all Roland Wells, who lives now. I think Roland's still in Leach for Manila. He's from that area, from Manila, and Roland was actually part of my high school coach. That Jim Kimbrell went into the administration part, in which most do, and they hired Roland pretty much out of college, and he came in and took us over. And really, all you had to do is, assemble the guys, get them to the games, and we pretty much took care of everything else. We knew one another extremely well. Like I said, not only did we practice together in the afternoons, and even in the junior high level, we played constantly outside of that environment on our own in somebody's yard. I mean, in fact, that's where we were. If your mother came hollering for you at 5:30, 6 o'clock to come home and eat, she knew where you were. Didn't have cell phones, but she knew where you were. And I can still remember her calling me, it's time for supper, and you'd run home and eat and get ready for the next day.
So growing up like that and playing so much with the same guys, I mean, I've always been a big proponent that when you can play like that in games, and I don't want to say games that don't matter, but like the pickup games and playing in somebody's yard and stuff, I feel like you learn as much about your teammates in those type of games as you do maybe in like a structured practice. I mean, what's your take on that?
No question. I think you're dead on. I don't think there's any question that one of the things that made us outstanding, and it wasn't the athleticism, it wasn't the quickness. We shot a lot, we played a lot together. We knew one another. I knew what guys were going to do on my team almost before they did it, because we had done that so many times, and that gave us, in my opinion, an advantage. I think had you put us together, say my junior year, and just sort of said, okay, this kid's moving in, this guy's moving in, and we're going to have this starting five. I don't think we would have been nearly as effective as we were, simply because we'd been together so long. I mean, it was ridiculous. I knew what they were going to do, like I said, before they knew what they were going to do almost. But it was fun in that sense, and it also created continuity with the community. They knew everybody. They knew the players. They'd grown up with these kids. The grown-ups had knew these guys that helped raise everybody, and I think that helped as far as attendance and getting involved and being a part of the program.
Oh, I think so, and one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand when it comes to small school basketball is that you have people in the community. They may not have a kid playing on the team, but they're going to yell and hoop and holler just like those kids on the floor belong to them. And I don't think you get that at everywhere.
No, and that was the thing we had back in those days. Of course, we're talking in the 60s when I played. I'm 74 years old. I graduated in 68 from Turrell, and we only had like 22 in my graduating class. That's how small we were. And obviously, most of the guys that were in that graduating class played basketball. That's another thing. We pretty much, anybody that could chew gum and walk at the same time played on the basketball team. And that was our inlet, if you will, our way of communicating with everybody, and you were on the team, you were somebody in the community. But yeah, there's no question that having the familiarity with one another and the community, and most of the people that came to the games obviously did, you only have 10, 12 on the team. They weren't parents of players. They might have had a player, they might have had a son or daughter, if you will, back in the day that played prior to us, or maybe later on, but it was because of the continuity. Like I said, basketball was the key to that community, and outside the farm, they farm in the daytime and come to the gym at nighttime, especially during the winter, because what do you do when you farm? You can't farm during the wintertime, so you rally around your basketball program.
So you mentioned your playing days. Who were some of the big rivals of Turrell back in that time period?
Well, it's really interesting you mentioned that, and I'm not sure where they are now, or if they've consolidated. I think Wiener went to Harrisburg. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, Wiener was probably considered our rivalry, if you will, as far as getting to the state tournament. We always knew we were probably going to have to go through Wiener, or Wiener was going to have to go through us in the district tournament to get to the state tournament. I don't think back in those days we didn't have really a regional and all that. Those steps, you pretty much played. You went to the district, and the district sent so many to the state tournament. But Wiener was the Wiener Cardinals. We've had some wars. We played throughout the league. Was really interesting. The Crawfordsvilles and the Earls and the Marions and Kaiser, Luxor. Those were the kind of small schools, very similar to us, small communities where probably the majority of people around there worked in the farming industry, and then their sons or daughters went to those particular schools. And that's where we grew up. Wilson, in fact, I drove not long ago. It was interesting to go back in time, and the old Wilson gym is still standing. Most of them are gone and not there, but we always loved going to Wilson. We just thought that was really a step up, because they had by far with that money over there in the Wilson plantations and all those things. But you almost figure they were gonna put on the dog, and they did in most cases. Plus, it wasn't far from us. I mean, it was only like 20 miles, and most everybody that supported the Turrell Rockets could get to the games.
So you mentioned Wiener being a big rival, getting to the state tournament, which was obviously the ultimate destination. What you have any specific memories that stick out to you about really, really sweet wins, or some bitter losses?
Yeah, if you get anybody listening that's from the Wiener area, they won't like this story. I remember when I was a senior, it snowed and iced really bad. We didn't have 555. We had to come up the old 63. And we got on the bus, and never will forget the bus driver's name, Mr. Teague. He also was the guy that popped the popcorn at the ball games, but he drove us to all the games. Mr. Teague obviously has since been gone, but we were late getting to the championship game of the NEA tournament played, of course, in the field house. Our opponent was Wiener. And we wanted to play that game so bad. And, I mean, we would have to we literally drove probably 10, 15 miles an hour once we got on 63 to make it to Jonesboro. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
And I don't know if you've ever been to the old Highway 63, but there's a pretty good sized ditch to your right. And I never will forget. I can still remember sitting on that bunch and looking out thinking, man, I hope God, Mr. T, you don't slide us off in that ditch. and we got there, didn't have time to really get involved. We just went in and changed real quick, went out and warmed up just a few minutes and played the game. And if I'm not mistaken, we were down quite a bit at half. I mean, it was ridiculous how bad we were down, and we were, like I said, a really good basketball team, and came back and won the game. That's probably one of the nightmares for Wiener and one of the big moments in the Turrell Rocket basketball industry or memories. And but we played Wiener, and they thought, I mean, we were down, I forgot how many it was at half. It was not very good, and came back and won the basketball game. That's one of the memories that I remember having against Wiener, and great story, because I didn't really think we'd ever get there. I really didn't. I didn't think that we'd even get there in time for the game, and then maybe have to postpone it. I don't know how that would have worked. We played it the next day if possible, but we forged ahead, and Mr. Teague drove that old bus all the way through all that and finally got there.
Well, and one thing that I want to add to this, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but back in that time, I mean, obviously there was no 3-point line, there was no shot clock, but there was also no alternating possession. And then if you had the ball at the end of the first quarter, then you got the ball to start the second quarter, and you hung on to it until you shot the ball, right?
Correct. No, we didn't have a three. We didn't have a shot clock. We averaged quite a few points because we pressed almost the entire game and forced people in a certain tempo. We wanted to run a gun and create an advantage. That we felt like that was one of our strengths. So again, knowing one another, having played with one another, we knew what one another was going to do, and we worked extremely hard. There was not a practice that I could remember that we didn't work on pressing. I mean, that's pretty much what we did the entire game, and created turnovers. And then obviously we tried to turn those turnovers into points. So we probably averaged back even in the 60s the point level that most people would think, oh, that's not possible. It was. Without a shot clock and without a three, we really forced the tempo. Now, when you're as good as we were, and we were a really good basketball team. Now, you take one of those guys out of there and we weren't nearly as good. The word team is very, very important when you talk about when I played and what we were able to accomplish was simply because of the team. But the thing about it was we only I probably played in most games, not all of them. I'm going to say at least 50% of them, half the game. I mean, we might be up against certain people. I'm not going to call out any names. We might be up 25 at half. That's how good we were versus the other opponents. And obviously you let everybody else play. And there was many nights I only played a half. There were some nights I only played a quarter.
And as a competitor, I'm sure that was, the 17, 18-year-old you was thinking, man, coach, let me play, I mean, but.
Oh yeah. You know what? Good question. Good thoughts. Good statement. Yeah, we practice all the time, and when you came time for games, the last thing you want to do is sit on the bench and watch somebody. But you're up. You're playing an opponent that you're, I think, in most cases superior to. There's no sense in not playing your bench, and only enhancing your team when you practice your bench, and your bench gets to continue to play. And I didn't look at minutes. I wish I had enough. I could go back and check all those. I bet there was guys that didn't start that played as many minutes as I did, if not more.
Well, and to be able to get those guys into the game, because you can put them in practice all day long, but it's a little different when those lights come on. And for those guys to get experience, probably paid off down the road, because eventually there was going to be a situation in a tight game, in a 2, 3, 4-point game, where those guys were going to have to come in because somebody fouled out or got hurt or something. And you don't want them coming in with the deer in the headlights look in that moment. So for them to get that opportunity, I'm sure paid off for you guys down the road.
No doubt about it. Yeah, it did. And you got to understand, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, when we came out and the bench came in, they were still playing against probably the starting 5 or 6 or 7 on the opponent's team, because you don't want to go down, you're down 20 at half or 25, and then you play your subs and you get beat even worse, So you're going to play your starters probably most of those third quarters, if not part of them in most of the fourth quarter, to try to enhance that. But our players, like I said, 1 through 10 or 12, we were all pretty much the same.
All right, Coach. Well, I'll wrap this up and let you get on with your day here. But I got to throw this at you as kind of a fun question. Now everybody, players nowadays, they have to have their music or something to get them kind of flip that switch, so to speak, and get them ready to play. What did you guys do? Did y'all just show up locked and loaded and ready to go?
Yeah, we didn't have that. I'm not sure that it would have helped anyway, but no, we didn't have music playing, blasted during practice or anything. Matter of fact, people can understand this a little bit if they're older. If you got caught near the water fountain, you had to run extra laps. That was back in the day where water was bad for you. Now we know that it dehydrates you, and you need all the water you can get when you played. We took salt tablets. I mean, it was ridiculous. We did just the opposite of what you ought to do for the body when you're performing, and that was just part of the ritual, and you didn't know any better. Yeah, we just showed up, got dressed, and ready to roll, man. We love to play. We love to play together. And, interesting, and I didn't mention this, not only were we together playing basketball, you got to understand, when we weren't playing basketball, we were together. I mean, it's a small community, and when you're out and about just having fun, maybe playing pickup baseball or mumbly peg or whatever, we were always together. I mean, how do you not? It's only a handful of you. And those were your best friends, and you stuck with them through thick and thin. And whether you were playing basketball or not, you were probably together.
Yeah, I had an old coach one time that talked about being at the small school, and he's like, you can't just he kind of equated it to playing cards. He said you can't just put 3 or 4 cards down and say, hey, give me 3 or 4 new ones here. You have to play the hand you're dealt and make the best of it.
That's a great analysis, and we were very fortunate, and I was very fortunate, and I thank the Lord every day that I grew up in a community where we had some good players, and we played together and understood one another. And I think because of the ability to play together and perform together, we had a lot of success. And I could have easily grown up in a community where 1 player, maybe 2 players were pretty good, and then the rest of them were not very good, and you finished 500. And I was very fortunate to play on some outstanding teams with some great guys.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk with me today, and we got some more conversations we're going to have in the future, because I want to get back with you and talk about your time coaching over at Leachville, because that's another basketball-centric community with a lot of deep history and a lot of good players from the past that are also, their legacies are also kind of being forgotten, and I want to try to keep that from happening if I can. So I will definitely be reaching back out to you to talk some coaching and Leachville Lions and everything that went along with that here sometime in the near future. But really do appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Marcus. Enjoy visiting with you, and look forward to visiting with you in the future.
All right. Thank you, Coach.
I want to send a big thank you out to Coach Nelson Catalina for sharing some great memories from his days playing as a Turrell Rocket. Now, we're definitely going to have him back on sometime in the near future to talk about when he was coaching at Leachville.
I've also got to send a big thank you out to my good friend Randy Myers for getting me in contact with Coach Cat and reminding me that Coach Cat was a Turrell Rocket at one time. I knew he had played in the area, but I just couldn't remember exactly where. So thank you, Randy, for your help with that. And, while I'm in the mood of handing out thank yous, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the podcast and is listening so far. I'm getting a ton of feedback, and just to be completely honest with you, it's a little bit overwhelming to me. I mean, it makes me feel really awesome to know that people are enjoying listening to this as much as I've enjoyed putting all of these episodes together. Now, if you have an idea for a future episode of a school that we've not talked about yet, you can leave a comment on our Facebook page, or if X, formerly known as Twitter, is more your speed, send us a tweet. Send something there to @FinalJumpShot. Let us know what school you would like to hear about, or what great players from schools that no longer exist that got consolidated in. There's legends all over the state I'm learning about that played at small schools, and those schools don't exist anymore. So send them over to me and we'll get them added to the list. The list is quite long, but I've always got room for more potential episodes down the road. Now, over the next few weeks, here's a taste of what you can look forward to hearing on the Final Jump Shot. Now, these are in no particular order, but here's what we got coming up. We're going to head up to Lawrence County and talk about the Black Rock Zebras and their legendary coach, Herschel Bryant. Now, after that, we're going to head down Highway 67 into Jackson County and talk some Swifton Lady Pirate basketball with former Lady Pirate great Mary Adams Holden. And then, of course, with me running the show here, we're going to head back into Buffalo country. I sat down with all three Morrow brothers and let you guys just listen to the great stories that Jerry, JC, and Ralph, who's mainly known as Rooster, the stories that they had, and they're going to share those with you as well. And that's a great one that I'm really looking forward to. And that's just kind of a sampling of what we've got coming here over the next few weeks here at the Final Jump Shot. But for now, our time has run out. I'm your host, Marcus Carlton, and you've been listening to The Final Jump Shot.
You've been listening to The Final Jump Shot, a Cam Productions podcast. Subscribe to The Final Jump Shot to ensure you never miss an episode.